Welcome to New York's number 2 sports show. The New York Giants lose to the Washington Commanders 27-22 at MetLife Stadium. So the Giants are now 0-5 at home. They are now 0-4 in the division, and they're on a 4-game losing streak. So, look, moving forward, as far as I'm concerned, I'd prefer the Giants to lose games. Next week being kind of a big one from a tankathon standpoint against the Carolina Panthers in Germany. With the results of today's games, there are a bunch of 2-win teams. No team has 0 or 1 wins. So it could really go either way. Because again, you have about, like, as I'm recording this, about 8 or 9 teams with 2 wins, which is a bunch. But as far as the game is concerned, offense actually wasn't really all that bad. There was no explosivity. Giants ran the ball a good amount, especially in the first half. Like, that was the game plan, and they ran it with effectiveness. But the Giants defense had no ability to stop Jayden Daniels and the Commanders. And even without Brian Robinson, the top Washington running back, it didn't matter whether it was Austin Eckler, Chris Rodriguez. They were able to just churn out yardage. And Jayden Daniels was just very comfortable in the pocket. The Giants, the pass rush is kind of a big part of this defense, and it really didn't do much, if anything. The Giants didn't get any sacks on the game. And, the Giants offensive line, they held up, but still, Washington gets a couple of key sacks. And the one turnover was a part of that, where Daniel Jones fumbles the ball early in the game. We'll talk about that. But, Jones was fine. I mean, certainly in terms of any of the people saying, Jones should be benched. Now, taking the injury element out of it, right? Like, taking that aside, because that is something that's important, right? Like, if Daniel Jones is injured, that would not be a good situation for the Giants as it pertains to his contract. But as far as, like, deserving to play, you're not going to bench Jalen Jones after this game. Now, if he had struggled in this one, I think that, again, it was close, and it's been close. But I think I would certainly expect to see Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback against Carolina in Germany next week. Jones goes 20 for 26, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So this was Daniel Jones' first passing touchdown at home of the season, which is pretty crazy in Game 5. The Giants had only had 1 overall touchdown in the first 4 games. So they're able to get 3 in this one. Daniel Jones actually gets one on the ground as well, where he actually trucked a couple of Commander defenders to do it. So, again, like, the longest pass play was a 35-yard touchdown to Theo Johnson pretty late in the game. Before that, the longest one was like 23 to Darius Slayton. Malik Neighbors was really held in check by Washington, 9 catches for 59 yards on 11 targets. So they did a good job of making sure that he was not going to beat them, because Neighbors in Game 1 against Washington was very, very good. He was obviously, he had that drop at the end of that game, but that was an adjustment made. And for Washington, really, it was kind of a group effort. Terry McLaurin, it's funny. Terry McLaurin only makes 2 catches, but 2 of them are touchdowns. So making the most of it. And really, that end of half touchdown by the Giants against the Giants was very unacceptable for many reasons. And Deonte Banks did a poor job on that one, on that McLaurin touchdown. Just no need for that to have happened with how much time the Commanders had left. It was crazy. I mean, Washington was looking at a situation where at most they were getting a field goal. All of a sudden, 2 big plays, and Washington was in the end zone. So the Giants were playing catch up the whole game. In that sense, it was kind of similar to the Pittsburgh game, where now think about it. Giants have not held the lead in this 4-game losing streak. They haven't had a lead really much at all. I think technically, and I could be wrong about this, they may have actually held. See, this is going to be a stat that people are eventually going to say, I think, because they did not lead against Pittsburgh. I'm almost certain they didn't lead against Cincinnati. That Eagle game, even though they lost 28-3, they actually may have had a 3-0 lead. Either way, the point is that the Giants are basically in trail mode every time. Not by much, Like they're within. Well, the Eagle game got out of hand certainly, but it's not like the Giants are getting absolutely pulverized. It's not like that. But they're 2-7, and that's just like what they are. I don't think that that's really far off from who they are. Sure, are they maybe a little bit better than 2-7? Yeah, I could give you that. Certainly not worse than that. But bad teams find ways to lose, and that's exactly what they do. And it just goes to show you again, kind of to my original point about Tankathon. And obviously, look, the QB class is different every year. The Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, that top three, that was known they were going to be pretty good. And early returns, especially in the case of Daniels, seems like they're going to be good. And you don't know what's going to be next year, right? I mean, whether it's Shador Sanders, Cam Ward, that's a conversation for another day. But I think it worked out well for Washington to lose games last year. And this isn't me saying that the players have to play to win, but it's what's more beneficial at the end of the day. And it just goes to show you right there, Washington was not a good team last year. They finished with the second to worst record in the NFL. The Giants beat them twice, one of them with Tommy DeVito. It's little things like that. It's the reason why I'm the type of fan that I want future success. And so that is where it's unfortunate because, I want the Giants to be good. This has been a thing a lot in the last decade, but I think it's beneficial for the Giants to lose games. If it happens, I think that's a good thing. I really do. I mean, I think especially at 2-7, playoffs are completely gone. No, I mean, to me, they were gone a few weeks ago. Like to me, once they lost to the Eagles, at that point, I thought it was over. But if you wanted to hang on to anything, these Steelers and Commanders losses just completely scrap it, totally. So now, the Giants are 2-7. So Tyrone Tracy Jr. He got the lion's share of opportunities. Devin Singletary definitely was involved a bit, but it was more of Tracy's backfield. He ended up being all right. If you remember in the last episode, I talked about how he got a concussion. He ended up being okay. So that's good news there. Happy to see that, he's healthy and good to go. As far as injuries that occurred in this game, Darius Slayton left the game with a concussion. And could this be Darius Slayton's last game as a Giant? I don't think it will be. I think if you're to see a Giant traded at the deadline, which is in a couple days, I think it would be Azeez Ojulari. There's a lot of rumors out there. I tend to think that he's going to be dealt. And look, I don't think the Giants are going to get a whole lot in return, right? Maybe a 5th-round pick. I mean, if things maybe in a pick swap, the Giants could land a 4th that way if they also trade away, let's say, their 5th or 6th or something like that. So that will be interesting because I think the Giants, like with where they are, they will certainly be listening to offers for sure. And I would expect at least one Giant trade, with Ojulari probably being the most likely one dealt. But yeah, as far as, again, on the injury front, Slayton left the game, and it was late due to concussion. Maybe if there was more time left, maybe there's a chance he would have returned, but that's something to keep an eye on for sure, whether he's, regardless of the trade rumors. And the Giants really came back relatively healthy, where I'll say they got hurt again with special teams. Greg Joseph in practice ends up with an oblique injury. So Jude McAtomney, he actually made his debut. He only made a couple of extra, what was it? No, I guess, he did make a field goal. Correction, right? He made the couple of kicks. It was a field goal and an extra point. It didn't really look pretty, but he did make both of them. I would expect the Giants to, and who knows we haven't really heard much about Graham Gano, but maybe McAtomney gets another chance next week. You know what? Actually, maybe he will, just because it's one game before the bye. Kind of somewhat of a quick turnaround. I'm sure they're going to probably take the trip to Germany, within a couple of days. So it might just be easiest. And it's not like he did poorly. So that's probably what does happen. But yeah, they got cornerbacks back, whether that was Cordell Flott, Adoree Jackson returned as well. So they're a little bit more whole there. Not like it really made much of a difference, but certainly it's a team that's getting a little bit healthier. As far as offensive line was concerned, they stuck with Chris Hubbard at left tackle, which again is an indictment on Josh Ezeudu and Evan Neal. So the offensive line has been what it's been, except Andrew Thomas out and now Hubbard in at left tackle. So yeah, let's discuss the game. Let's get into it. So, I mean, in both halves, timeouts really weren't used for either team until the end. Like, I feel like it was a pretty quick moving game. Not a whole lot of incompletions, a lot of running. And both teams were fairly efficient. So, yeah, it was a fairly crisp game. Officiating, not great. And probably, certainly the Giants didn't make out well on a couple of plays that we'll talk about that, could have been the difference between a win and a loss. Again, I felt like Washington was in control of this game basically the whole way, but it could have been more interesting if not for a couple of calls. And so, yeah, the Giants get the ball first, and they do go 3 and out to start it out. So that's the thing, too, in these MetLife games, they're just unable to, get it off. Like, it's rarely that they get a lead, it feels like, and so the crowd just doesn't get into it. But the Giants defense, they get a 3 and out as well, which is kind of interesting because if you remember, I don't believe they forced a punt in game 1 against the Commanders. And I think it was only 2 in this game. It was 2. And I think it might have even been the first drive of both halves. But again, Washington with Jayden Daniels, really were able to. He had so much time to throw. That was disappointing. I felt as if the Giants would have had a better chance of putting pressure on him, and it just wasn't the case. But we go to the next drive, and this is kind of, in a lot of ways, I guess, I know it's early to say it, but it was kind of the turning point in the game. Giants start the drive from their own 8, and they're able to move the ball pretty well on the ground. Tyrone Tracy with a 10-yard run to give him a first down. And then Daniel Jones with a 24-yard run. This was a nice play design by Brian Dable. And it's one that we haven't really seen much. And Jones he looked good. Like, I'll say athletically, like there was more burst with Daniel Jones, where I feel like it's been lacking a little bit like this season. That reminded me, like he definitely turned on the Jets and was gone, not gone, but gets the ball to about midfield. Devin Singletary with a 15-yard run, Tyrone Tracy with a 10-yard run, and it sets up 1st and 10 at the Washington 29-yard line. So off to a really good start. I mean, pretty much every play was a positive. But what ends up happening is, I guess it was to Daniel Jones' right side. Daniel Jones faces pressure that he doesn't see. And on the play, I think it was Dante Fowler, he was able to hit Daniel Jones. Originally they called it, this is an interesting play. Originally it was called incomplete, but it was correctly reversed to a sack fumble, and it's recovered by Washington. The interesting thing to me, though, was that they end up, like, I understand the idea of awarding Washington the ball, and I guess I'd have to check it again. Like, Washington ends up with the ball at the Giant 31. So usually, like, they'll call it dead. And so I'm still trying to wrap my brain around why it ended up being ruled at the Giant 31-yard line. And what's also unfortunate is because the whistle blew, Devin Singletary, for example, I think he had a chance to recover it and didn't. It was one of those things where, under the circumstances that it would have been a potential incomplete / interception, it was dropped by the Washington defensive lineman. And like from there, the whistle blew, so people kind of stopped. But not Washington. Like, they did what they had to do. So that was definitely a bit of a chaotic play where it just goes to show you have to play through the whistle on those, because the play kind of is still live. I agree with Washington getting the ball, but I don't really understand why they got all that yardage. Give them the recovery. But again, there was another sort of interesting play later on, which we'll discuss. So Washington, that's a total change of momentum right there. Washington gets the ball at the Giant 31. And on the second play, it's a defensive pass interference on Cordell Flott. Jayden Daniels intended for Noah Brown. And this is, the Washington coming off of that, crazy Hail Mary win against the Chicago Bears. But now that gives them great field position. Again, clear pass interference on flop. And on second goal at the 1, it's Jayden Daniels to Terry McLaurin touchdown. So I think there was a little bit of confusion. I think maybe between Drew Phillips and Deontay Banks. Maybe Phillips after the game was saying that like there should have been a switch, and there wasn't. And it's an easy McLaurin 1-yard touchdown. But the Giants are able to respond with a touchdown of their own. It is one of those long, methodical Giant drives. That's the only way they can really do it. 16 plays, 73 yards, 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Devin Singletary kind of starts out the drive. Then they go to Tyrone Tracy, then back to Devin Singletary. And there was a key neutral zone infraction penalty on Washington at the end of the first quarter, and that was after a Daniel Jones 11-yard scramble, which was a pretty good play by him. Start of the second quarter, again, it's just a lot of running between Jones, Singletary, and Tracy. And then there's an 11-yard completion from Jones to Slayton to the 2. And then the Giants finally get their first passing touchdown at home of the season. It's Daniel Jones to Chris Manhertz. So the backup tight end, more known for his blocking, he gets the touchdown. It was a nice play action fake, and they find Manhertz in the back of the end zone to tie it up at 7. But the Giant defense is unable to get a stop on the next drive. Washington is able to move down there pretty efficiently at 11 plays, 70 yards, 6-minute drive. Noah Brown with a 16-yard reception to get it into Giant territory. Austin Eckler with a 20-yard run. And there was a 4th down conversion, a 4th-and-1 scramble by Jayden Daniels to the Giant 6. And then Austin Eckler ends up punching it in from the 1-yard line to retake the lead for the Commanders. They make it 14-7. Then the Giants go 3 and out. And this is where Washington gets the ball back. And just a really, really bad job by the Giant defense. It ends up being a 12-play, 87-yard drive, a little over 5 minutes worth. And 31-yard pass completion from Daniels to Noah Brown. He made some pretty big plays in this game. But the Giants get to a point where it's the 2-minute warning. It's 3rd and 6 for the Commanders at the Giant 40. A 5-yard pass from Daniels to Ertz. Washington goes for it, and very, very closely, Eckler gets the first down. They reviewed it, and the call on the field stood. I think whatever they would have called in the field would have stood. Because, in other words, if they called them short, I don't think they would have overturned that. So that was close, but ultimately Washington gets the first down. But there is an offensive holding on the Commanders, which sets them back a bit to the point where they're in a situation. There's 20 seconds left. Washington has used 2 timeouts. They only have 1 left. 3rd and 18 at the Giant 42. So you're thinking, okay, either it's going to be a field goal for Washington if they get enough yardage here or not. No, it ends up being more than that. A 24-yard play, a reception for De'Ami Brown. And again, the tackling bad. I think it was Drew Phillips who might have missed the tackle that made it longer than what it should have been. Washington calls their final timeout with 11 seconds left. So even at that point, Washington, no timeouts left at the Giant 18. Okay, if you defend this properly, they probably shouldn't get a touchdown. What happens? Jayden Daniels to Terry McLaurin, 18-yard touchdown against Deontay Banks. And again, that's where Deontay Banks, it's just so noticeable, like where he's messing up in really key spots. Because to be honest, I didn't notice Banks a whole lot. There was a lot of running in this game, but that was just, you can't get beat like that. In that situation, you need to stay on Terry McLaurin. He doesn't. McLaurin goes by him, and it's a touchdown to make it 21-7 at half. So that's a pretty bitter way to end the half. It really shouldn't have been that way. Again, the defense just was awful, honestly. We started the second half with a Washington 3 and outs. Like I said, the 2 punts that Washington would have would be 3 and outs on the first drives of each half. The Giants do score, but only a field goal. There was a roughing the passer to start the drive, which was beneficial to the Giants. It really would have been a sack, but Dorrance Armstrong, unfortunately for him, he got his hand in Daniel Jones' face, so it was the correct call. The Giants do convert on a 4th and 1 QB sneak for Daniel Jones at around midfield. Then Malik Neighbors starts getting involved a bit. 16-yard catch from Malik Neighbors. A 3rd and 13 pass play from Jones to Slayton to make it 4th and 2. And the Giants are able to barely get the first down on a Malik Neighbors reception. Now, this one honestly could have went Washington's way. That looked kind of close, but they give the Giants the first down. So I guess it kind of goes both ways. It's Jones to Slayton again for 15 yards. And then you end up in a situation where on a 3rd and 6 at the 8, Giants kind of knowing they're in a 4-down situation, it's a 5-yard run for Tyrone Tracy. And then here's where things get controversial. So now this is going to be, I believe, 3 straight weeks where a Giant penalty takes a touchdown off the board. And this one was a really, really shitty call. It would have been a Daniel Jones easy touchdown to Wan'Dale Robinson, a 3-yard touchdown. But they called Darius Slayton for offensive pass interference. So Slayton was trying to give room for Wan'Dale, kind of, trying to maybe set a little bit of a pick, but like it was so minimal. Like you can't call that. Like it's kind of insane. So the Giants ultimately settled for 3 because it cost them 10 yards. So you're not going to go for it 4th and 11. And McAtamney gets the 31-yard field goal to make it 21-10. Washington then, kind of a similar drive to Washington where they are able to get it deep into Giants territory. And on this one, it was Jayden Daniels on a 16-yard scramble, Noah Brown 8-yard catch, Ben Sinnott 12-yard reception, and they end up settling for an Austin Seibert 31-yard field goal. So that regains that 2-touchdown lead. Giants get the ball back. We go to the 4th quarter, and it's a Wan'Dale Robinson 10-yard catch on a 3rd down. Malik Neighbors 13-yard reception. There was a defensive pass interference called that prolonged the Giants' drive. And then where things get kind of weird, this is a play. Actually, no, it's let me see here. Was this the Slayton? Yeah, okay. 3rd and 9 at the 40. What was the Slayton play where Slayton gets hurt? Could it have been? It might have been the next drive. Yes, it was the next drive. Okay. Was jumping the gun there. Never mind. There's a 3rd and 9 where Daniel Jones throws it to Malik Neighbors for 8 yards, and the Giants challenged it, and it was reversed. So it was actually a first down for the Giants. So then there is a 23-yard play from Jones to Slayton to get the ball to the Washington 2-yard line. And that is where Daniel Jones is able to get a touchdown. And he trucks over, I think, a couple of Washington defenders. Like, they had him, but, pretty nice-looking play by Jones. Gives the Giants the touchdown. And the Giants go for 2. And this is exactly what they did against Pittsburgh the week before. I don't mind the process and the analytics of down 8 going for 2. I see the appeal. But it's the actual play calling that has been pretty fucking brutal. These plays have had no opportunity. So Daniel Jones ends up trying to make the best of something. He runs, but he's short. He tries to break a couple of tackles, but they get him down. So it keeps the score at 8. That's a pretty big swing when you consider momentum. So that happened again 2 weeks in a row. Again, I agree with the process for a couple of reasons. Remember, the Giants, their kicker is not really that dependable to begin with. The one thing that I guess I would say for the people that I can agree with the people that didn't want to do it is, the fact of the matter is the Giants don't exactly have the greatest just offense in the world. And do you trust that they are going to score in those situations? To be fair, though, the offense was pretty good in this game for the most part. So that keeps it at 24-16. Washington gets the ball back, and again, they're able to get points, which is exactly what they needed. They needed at least 3 points, and they do get it. And a big 3rd and 9 conversion, one of the big ones of the game, Austin Eckler, a 28-yard catch from Jayden Daniels. Then a lot of good runs for Washington, and it would be a 17-yard run for Rodriguez, but the Giants are able to kind of hold them. It ends up being they get it to the 2-yard line. Austin Seibert gets a 20-yard field goal to make it a score of 27-16. So it was the bare minimum of what Washington needed to do. But at the same time, I guess the Giants were still in it at this point. Game was not over because both teams had 3 timeouts left, even though there was less than 4 minutes left in the game. So the Giants get the ball back. And this is where Theo Johnson, who had a couple of drops earlier in the game, kind of makes up for it. He ends up making a 15-yard catch to get the ball to midfield. And this is a play that was pretty bizarre, but at the end, it kind of ends up netting out to kind of where it should be. It was a Daniel Jones. Originally, it was an interception. Well, it was an interception that ends up coming off the board because of a defensive pass interference. But what ends up happening before, um, like we know about the pass interference, is it was an interception that was then fumbled by Washington and recovered by Darius Slayton. And he ends up getting hurt on this play, I believe. I think this is the one where he gets concussed on. It was a weird play. Now, ultimately, um, like it ends up being an interception. I think that they ruled that the runner was. Here's the thing, too. I think that they ruled that the runner might have been down. That was part of the reversal, was that I don't think the Slayton recovery would have counted because the Washington guy was down by contact, but it didn't matter anyway because of defensive pass interference. So there you go. The Giants keep the ball, and on 2nd and 10 at the 35, it is a 35-yard touchdown. A nice play from Daniel Jones to Theo Johnson. So congrats to Theo Johnson on getting his first NFL touchdown. Makes it 27-22, and the Giants have one last opportunity to maybe make a stop against Washington, and they don't do it. And it was a 2nd and 9 big play to Amadei Zaccheaus, a 42-yard catch to get it to Giants territory. We go to the 2-minute warning. I thought maybe the Giants were going to call a timeout at some point. They didn't. There was a face mask on DJ Davidson coming out of the 2-minute warning. And ultimately, Washington was able to run the clock out. It was Rodriguez who had a couple of runs where the Giants called one timeout, they called 2 timeouts, and on 3rd and 1 at the 2, it's a 1-yard gain by Rodriguez to get him the first down, not the touchdown. So ultimately, the Commanders would be in victory formation from the 1-yard line. Jayden Daniels with a couple of kneel downs, and the Commanders win 27-22. So it could have even been more. Again, especially in going through this again, the defense was just not good at all. Because it could have, like I said, 27 points is almost misleading. So, yeah, Washington beats the Giants twice, which we don't see too often. That did happen in 2021. So it's not as if it was a crazy long time ago. But, Commanders improved to 7-2. This seems like it is going to be a 2-team race in the NFC East between Washington and the Eagles. As the Cowboys, they are kind of in a pretty bad way. And Dak Prescott, he might be injured with a hamstring. So, So now, like I said, Giants, they will go to Germany, and then they'll have their bye week. So, look, in the ways of, like I said, tankathon and getting a better draft pick, Giants-Panthers, pretty big one. It really is. And the Panthers are actually coming off of their second win of the season. Bryce Young was able to get it done against the Saints. So they may be coming in with a little bit of confidence. I think they're actually getting a little bit healthy. I think they might be getting a few players back next week. So we'll see. And again, another thing to keep an eye on is the trade deadline in a couple of days. How many trades do the Giants make? Again, I think that they'll be semi-active. Maybe a trade or two, I think could be coming down the pipe. So we'll see. But another Giant loss. It's now 4 in a row, 0-5 at MetLife Stadium. Cannot get a win in division, 0-4 in division, and getting swept in the season series against the Washington Commanders. They lose to the Commanders by a final score of 27-22.